Hello. Boy, that was quick. Usually the camera takes like 10 seconds to warm up. Today's third video for today. Today's May 9th. Third video that I made today. Me a little bit sad. Not sad. Yeah, it's gonna be sad. Why this video today? Friend on Facebook posted a video, or not a video, came to my attention. Let me rephrase this. A little bit about a divorce that was not really the greatest for her. And it really set me back to my divorce. And so I really I need to state that what I'm going to say in this video, I wanted to acknowledge where I hate to say inspiration, but what pointed me in this direction was a friend who was hurt. And I feel for them. And it reminded me of me being hurt and how I know it's possible for other people to be hurt. So the content of this video from this point on is not like finger pointing or telling you we need to separate the people from it so that we can look at just the topic of divorce. Okay, so this is not going to be about, well, it's going to be about my divorce a little bit because it's my YouTube channel. Okay, but it's not going to be about specifically a specific person. Okay, so don't read in more into it than it's not. It's not about Squirtle's divorce or Pookie Bear's divorce. Let's just talk about divorce. Okay, so we're going to separate the tie to a specific person, place, or thing. Although I will be commenting on my divorce to a certain degree. Okay. And here's why it's sad. It's sad because I think it can not kill the human spirit, but number one, it causes pain. It causes disruption, especially when you're dealing with other people's lives, your children's lives, your own life, or whatnot. So that's where the sadness kind of comes in. But anyway, all right, enough show. Let's get to matter. I think we we're definitely products of our environment. Be fair to say. I'm a product of my environment, you're a product of your environment. And we're somewhat a product of, the things we know about. When I say divorce, we tend to think, it's, or transgender, let me rephrase that. We say transgender. I think the words we use, words somewhat like passing or stealth, and I mentioned that in my previous video. I'm starting to hate the word stealth as much as I do passing now. But like, we say there's a reason to hide, there's a reason to, people don't understand us, which, granted, true. But I think that mentality is somewhat of an old mentality. Like, to say that everyone, and I guess you'd have to base it on your society and where you're at, but to say that, obviously, from a national dialogue, yes, transgender people are being made fun of and abused by the president and everything else, especially with military service. No argument there. But I think we have to get past that bias. When we talk about divorce, we're talking about the law. Okay. And I can only share with you my experience. Your mileage may vary. I was married in the state of Indiana, under the state of Indiana. My marriage license has state of Indiana on it. And so, when it comes time to think about a divorce, it's definitely to our advantage to look at the state laws for the state that we're in. If you're in the state of Illinois, then you look at the state rules of Illinois. If you're in the state of Indiana, you go to Indiana. If you go, whatever state you're in that's on your marriage certificate, that may very well be the laws of the state under which you live. Or as well as perhaps the laws of the court that you were married under, the county court. And so I guess if I could offer some advice, and advice, as I've said before, is often like armpits, and chances are mine stink worse than yours. But if I could suggest to anyone who's considering a divorce to spend some time educating yourself as to the laws of your state, the laws of the county, the laws of the court, just to familiarize yourself with what happens. What is divorce? What jurisdiction? What is the context? Okay. And a lot of, I think, what I'm going to share may or may not be common sense. However, I tend to think I'm pretty okay in the brain department, and I fucked up. I messed up. Okay. I did not do the research, and so I would share that with you. Do the research, okay? Get to know the law and what's involved. If you have children, here's another one. Figure out what is the state's, how does the state do child, guardianship? What are the rules? Someone had told me, and I don't know that this is true, so it's hearsay, that the state of Kentucky, for example, automatically assumes that a child should be with one parent, and usually it's the mother. The mother gets, in the case of a mom and a dad. Now, of course, let's go by the wayside and look at how dated that model is, because you have lesbian couples who adopt children, and you have gay couples that adopt children. So that model of a father and a mother is outdated. And depending on your state, how liberal, how conservative is your state, or the rules of the court or whatnot. I would assume a court in a very metropolitan, cosmopolitan city like San Francisco is going to be different than a small city or a county in Mississippi, or, again, we don't know. And I'm not trying to pit one against the other. I'm just saying, be aware of the laws to which you're going to, do. From a personal note, I can share with you, and I made a video on this too, about in an ideal world, we keep our transition separate from our divorce, And that's it's not always easy. It's not always the case. A lot of times one causes the other. But, again, go back to the law of the land. Does the law in your state, does it have like special rules for transgender or homosexual, or, you know what I'm saying? You got to just do the research and see what happens. Now, why? Well, I have seen and I have experienced trans women, myself included, and maybe I should say that, myself, because again, I only know myself. But I've seen something very similar repeatedly, especially if you are a parent, you're a father, you have children. We get, number one, we're emotional. We're taking hormones. Our bodies are changing. Our minds are funky. Okay, we get emotional, etc., the estrogen. So we're a bit emotional. Not necessarily the best place to make a rational decision. Okay, so it takes time. But I know that I was deathly afraid of losing my child. Okay, of being told, I couldn't be a parent, I couldn't be a custodial, I can't see my children, etc., etc. So I pretty much would have agreed to just about anything as far as the terms of the divorce, or the idea that as part of the divorce I couldn't transition. I couldn't be my authentic self as a result of the divorce. I would have to wait to transition or whatever. And so we're emotionally charged, disturbed, for lack of a better word. And it's very hard to be dispassionate and look at the law. Because the law is, right? Justice is blind, right? And so once we educate ourselves on what the state does and how does the state determine does the child go with the mother? Does the child go with the father? What are the terms? I mean, you have to look at the law. So maybe I'm repeating myself, but I think it's to our advantage to find out what the law says. Okay. The reason being, and maybe I'm building up to it because it's kind of negative. Since we're already kind of vibrating, it's very, very easy, I think, for us to become manipulated by our soon-to-be ex-spouse or even our soon-to-be ex-spouse's lawyer, okay, who uses it somewhat as a threat. Well, okay. The lawyer says, well, Squirtle, you owe so much money in child support, and I'm going to get the kids, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And if you don't agree to it, well, I'm going to hire a lawyer, and I'm going to sue you, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay? So, I mean, in my mind, it's abuse, mental abuse. Poor Squirtle. He didn't deserve this. But if Squirtle doesn't know the law, and Squirtle is concerned about seeing Squirtle's children, if Squirtle, I like I said, I would have agreed to eat bugs to get through my divorce. Okay. When in reality, justice is blind. Okay. So, do you really think? Again, look up in your state constitution. Look up in the law and see what they say. Does the law say that transgender people have no rights? Does the law say it? And maybe the law doesn't say anything. And so again, here you have someone who might have a bit of an agenda. Not to make fun of you. You're priceless. But someone who might have an axe to grind, or someone who might be a little bit upset because, they're losing their husband. Again, no negativity on you. You're just a filling in for somebody, okay? Again, it's very easy to get manipulated, okay? And whether they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but you can have someone who's maliciously out to get you, or to try and keep you from transitioning, or just to make your life miserable, or they just don't know any better, and they have friends whispering in their ears, girl, if that was my husband, I would do blah, 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 blah. Okay? So like I said, my suggestion, please, is find out the laws underneath what your state is. Okay? Don't allow someone to, it's not really blackmail, but it's bullying, because Squirtle doesn't know the law. And here you have someone who's like, you will do this, you better do this, you better do this. Well, much like a real bully, if Squirtle stands up and says, well, no, according to the state of, and I'm going to say Indiana, child support is calculated this way, and child custody is done this way. Okay? Squirtle's not being negative. Squirtle is stating the law. Okay? Right. Okay, now, again, guilty. I am guilty of being emotionally, okay? So I can tell you that's where I screwed up. So that's why I share it with you. If you find yourself in a similar position, do a little bit of research and find out what the law is. And I don't know the law in your state. Obviously, I don't know what state you're in. But that would be my word of advice, and I have seen some pretty mean and nasty stuff in a divorce agreement that really, to the point of a trans woman, a person can't transition, they can't see their kids, a lot of negativity that just, there's no basis for the law. It's not the state. You know what I mean? The state doesn't do it that way, but because we're so charged and we care or whatnot, and we sell ourselves short somewhat. Okay, let's talk about that. We'll segue into that. And again, hindsight's always 20/20, right? Let's talk about, this is not a divorce agreement, but let's talk about the divorce agreement, the papers. Okay. Our bear can hire a lawyer and draw up a set of divorce papers. Okay, you can even go, if you're into the internet, you can go to your state and even download like a dummy document to fill out. How are we going to divide the property? How are we going to divide our debt? How are children? Again. So it would behoove Squirtle to hire a lawyer from the beginning, or if they don't have a lawyer, get one. Okay, or if the lawyer for whatever reason doesn't work out, get another one. Okay, but again, it's kind of like fear tactics in a way. The bear comes up and says, well, I have this agreement and you better sign it, da 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 da. Well, truth be told, no. You don't have to sign it. You don't. Okay? If there's something in this text that is discriminatory or something that we don't like, for example, child support payments or visitation or a stipulation, and my fear again is that I couldn't transition. Well, so-and-so, you can't transition until the kids are 18 or whatever. Again, that's not state law. That is the intent of this person to try and fuck over this person. Okay? And again, I understand. I was there. I was mentally charged. Yes, of course, I'll take it. Yes. Okay? But what do you do? Well, a divorce agreement, if a marriage certificate is a bill of sale, okay, the divorce agreement is the end game. How are we going to break up our marriage? How are we going to separate this? Each party, in this case, Squirtle and my bear, can come up with their own divorce agreement. And that's where you have your lawyers to mitigate and to work out the differences. How do you get, I don't have another one to grab to show you. How do we get Shit, sorry. How do we get the bear's divorce agreement in line with Squirtle's divorce agreement? Okay. How do we get these two to merge? That's part of that divorce mitigation. Okay. And again, I can I can only speak from the state of Indiana. Okay. But in the state of Indiana, there's two routes you can take to get divorced. One of them is for the parties to come together and to, I keep saying mitigate, and I don't think that's it. It's not meditate. Mediation, okay? To come up with this one thing, and again, and it may be person to person or lawyer to lawyer, on representative of those two people. But the other route, hey, if you've got irreconcilable differences, the other route is to put it before the state and to say, well, we don't agree. We have irreconcilable differences. So we're putting everything on the state. Okay? It's up to the state to determine child support, visitation, parenting, all of that. Okay, now again, that's you spin the wheel of fortune. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get. However, if you know the state laws, then you do know what you're going to get, okay? I mean, even though, again, it may be a little bit of tweakage as to, okay, well, so-and-so gets parenting rights, so-and-so doesn't. But I know in just last week, the state of Kentucky, they changed, there's a thing on the docket so that, number one, they don't put the child in with one parent, they go for both. But I can tell you the state of Indiana does both. The state of Indiana by default at this moment, okay, or at least a year ago, 2 years ago, when I went through it, 2016. And I can tell you up till this last year, we've done some modifications, so I feel pretty confident to say 2017. The state starts with equal time, 50-50. And then from that point, it's not, well, so-and-so is gay, so-and-so is a transgender. No. It is, well, is so-and-so an alcoholic? Do they have mental, are they committing crimes? Are they a drug addict? Okay. Not based off of their gender or sexual orientation. Okay. But again, if Squirtle didn't do the research and Bear used that as leverage, oh yeah, well, I'm going to hire a lawyer and I'm going to do this and you better do this and you better do this. It's easy to see how in our state where we just want to keep our children, or if we just want to transition, we will agree to that. But it's not something we have to do. And so that's kind of what I felt like I kind of had to say for future generations. My time is past, okay? But for the next generation, and things may change, which is why I say, please, I would encourage you to do research. Now, the other thing that I can share from my own experience, because as I had said, my divorce was I was in that emotional state of yes, whatever you say, yes, whatever you say. Again, check your state laws. The state of Indiana allows you to modify your divorce agreement. You can go back to court. So if things maybe were a little emotional the first time or something was inappropriate, you do have the option to go back and modify it. It may be costly, it may be painful in emotional ways, but we have the ability to try and make things right or more equitable, which is what I would say happened more in my case. Things needed to be set and balanced. Okay. So that's kind of my emotionally charged note. And as I had said initially, it's not meant as a, you know, I'm sharing with you my experience and what I did wrong in the hopes that a future generation, a future person will know a little more what to do right. Obviously, you know, in the case of Bear and Squirtle here and in our lives, especially if we have a child, okay, while we may no longer be married, we do have a common bond between us. We have a child between us. And so that's why we need to be very, very civil, very, very polite. I would almost say almost overly polite, but to treat the other, we should anyway. I mean, to treat the other person with respect. If they call us names, we don't call them names back. We take the high road, as Michelle Obama said. We go high, take the high road, and we treat them with respect. Now, ideally, again, I would stress, hire a lawyer. I mean, from the get-go. And then this is not something you do lightly. I will say that too. It's not something you throw together. Do your research, come up with a plan. And much like I said, as far as the divorce agreement itself, in an ideal world, you can mediate, come together and reach out. But I would strongly advise against signing anything that comes out of the other party without dissecting it and evaluating. And I realize circumstances happen. And again, we're in that emotionally charged state. But that, I think, is where a lawyer comes into play. And I realize, not everyone has access to a lawyer. But I think it safeguards your side. Like I said, I know with me, I was charged up and I was afraid of losing my child. I was afraid of not being able to transition. And that's why I was like, okay, whatever you say, yes, whatever you say, I agree. And I'm glad that I hired a lawyer, because the lawyer was able to keep a cool head and say, okay, Karen, this is what we want. What is your position on this? What is your position on this? What is your position on this? And we were able, again, to mediate a little bit, because, it's kind of like, taking a knife to a gunfight. If you don't come prepared, but again, I understand circumstances what they are. Not everyone has access to a lawyer. So, and that's one of those things, and again, as we transition, we don't want anything to, number one, we don't want anything to prevent our transition, but we don't want anything to slow down our transition either. Let's say, for example, Squirtle knew Squirtle wanted to transition, but Squirtle also knew Squirtle had to hire a lawyer. And so Squirtle didn't have the money for that. So either Squirtle would have to slow down their transition or cut their expenses or find an additional source of income. And I can remember a friend of mine from work who didn't have the money for a divorce lawyer. They're not transgender, by the way. And they started working as a pizza delivery person at night and on the weekends. They were delivering pizzas to pay for a lawyer so they could get divorced. So again, in our transition, we may have to put things on hold for 6 months. And I know we hate it. I promise you, I understand, once we know what we want to do, we want to do it. Okay? But anyway. So like I said, this video is obviously has some emotion charged into it. I'm very happy today, I can say. There were definitely moments that I was biting my nails. And I just want to stress, number one, this is my experience. Your mileage may vary. In an ideal world, there wouldn't be a need for this video. In an ideal world. You know, as children, we would know we were transgender, and we would deal with it when we were kids or younger, and we wouldn't get married. We wouldn't have children. We would be, well, let me rephrase that. We would transition at an early age, okay? And then we get married, and then we adopt children, I guess, until the technology comes that we can bear children. In an ideal world, that would be the way it goes. Unfortunately, you know, we transition when we get the opportunity, and sometimes that is after we have children, and that's after we are married. And I guess also too, in an ideal world, you know, our transition would mean the end of our marriage. But if wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets. So okay, well, kind of gone on kind of long, but I wanted to share, and you know, it hurts my heart to, again, the inspiration after reading a sister who had a bad experience with divorce, reminded me of my experience and some of the other folks that I have met over the years, similar experiences, especially the bullying, you know, and just the bullying and what I consider to be mental abuse. I think that's what made me want to make this video, was to prevent that. When you have one person, whether it be your ex-spouse or your ex-spouse's lawyer, or someone coming at you saying that, you know, threatening you with taking you to court or suing you because you're ignorant of the law, it's something that can be very easily dealt with when you educate yourself, and that's a plus. Hiring a lawyer is also a plus that will keep, you know, help you out. But again, that bullying. Oh, hang on a minute. Let's see what this is. That, and then the other is now I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Happens when you get older. Out the window. But again, that bullying, especially again when you're in that excited state and you're agitated and you're emotional because your hormones, your body's changing, you can't really think straight. You can function and you're trying to make decisions, but you're emotional. You know, and again, to get bullied, I think that's what really, like I said, that's what really bothered me. It bothers me to see, it bothers you, you know, it's like when you see a little kid get bullied and you get angry and you're like, well, what can I do to help? You know, and that's kind of the incentive, I think, again, for future generations to make this video. And in the same way that I've had friends, and somewhat myself, and family members do it to you. They're like, you know, how dare you? You know, don't you love your children? Can't you wait? You know, I always want you to wait. You know, don't transition now. You know, wait till the child. You know, wait till the child's older, whatever. And they don't understand. You can't wait. I mean, you've been waiting, and waiting is death. You know. So, all right, my friends. So that's it. That's my video, and I definitely wish you all good luck. And I will add one other PS. I think 3 years, it takes a good 3 years after a divorce for life to resume to normal, or, sorry, Julie, as normal as you're going to get. I think it takes a good 3 years. You know, the first year is pitched battles, and once the papers are signed, and it's kind of like frustration, but you're happy because it's over. And then The second year is, the year of firsts, the first Christmas, the first Thanksgiving, the first birthday after the divorce. It's really that third year when life kind of begins to resume a little bit, and I think, hopefully we are able to be a co-parent with our former spouse to raise our children as co-equals. And I think, again, in that third year, you begin to see them more as a co-parent. And a lot of that, I think, also has to do with how they treat you. Are they accepting of you in your new gender role? Are they, what are they calling you? But again, you treat them with kindness, please, please. Ma'am, yes, ma'am, or sir. Okay. All right, on that note, I am relieved to get this topic off my chest, and I wish everyone good luck in becoming the best version of themselves. Okay? All right, take care, my friends, and good luck in your transition.